When I heard the story of Stephanus Coetzee, I immediately realized that this story has a lot of capacity in uniting the Worcester community.
If I was not in prison, I would have been a useless guy. I would probably have been dead because I was living on the edge. If I was released early in my life, before 2007, I would have been back with the Boerenmacht. I needed to be long in prison. I needed to stay almost 20 years in prison to truly change.
This story remains a very powerful story. Forgiveness is not only about feelings, but also about practical things that need to happen. And how forgiveness is complex. And there is not a manual.
Yena is one of the person owava ivumba irhuluwa ave ivumba ngathi kunyuka into ebolileyo xa ebiza iklina izokususa laa nto yaba kuku-exploda kwayo.
On Christmas Eve 1996, a bomb explodes in a supermarket in Worcester. A group called the Boere Aanvalstroepe claims responsibility for the blast, which kills 4 people and injures 60. They demand the release of what they call Boer freedom fighters and that Boers be granted their own territory. 2 right-wingers are later arrested on a remote farm where they've been preparing for their war. Literature found at the house links them to a religious sect, the Israelites. They believe the Afrikaners are among God's chosen people.
Nzakela amabele la matye ala mgqomo because ayenziwe ngesamente apha esuswini wayevulekile. Umlenze lo wase-left wawuphukile apha emlenzeni nothi uba ukuthi ithambo kuvele umongo uphukile.
Toe ek 'n sweetness sien, ek weet nie wat gebeur het nie, maar toe kon ek myself 'n keer uitgebars van die trane want toe weet ek iets is verkeerd.
The first blast was inside.
Kliënte het gegil en tekeer gegaan, van personeel het uitgehardloop, gestorm gekom, van die kliënte was vol bloed.
Ek kan toe nie hol nie, dan het dit toch gebreek, hy oomlik aan. My hak het gebreek, my voet het gebreek, my hakke, tone, enkels en slagader was afgewees. Toe ons in die dorp kom, het ons net die harde geluid gehoor. En toe het ons, 'n week daarna het ek uitgevind dat my pa in die bom betrokke gewees het, dat hy op die bom gesit het.
When the bomb exploded, when
I was carried by 2 men. And then when I was here, I told them, so, leave me here because I feel like I'm tired. I have no shoes, I have no head on I have nothing. And I told myself, no, God can take me if enough to take me. Emva kwako ke ngokuba ndizobona ke ihusky into endikhumula ihusky yamapolisa. Yafika yona yandithatha. Emva kwako ke zange phinde ndazi lokuthuka ke ngentsimbi yesixhenxe e-Urban Ranges.
Brother wami wayekulaa bhom wayehamba nam kanye ngeli suku lanamhlanje ndandiyokumthengela impahla yeChristmas. Uba wayengana-10 wayena-11 kodwa wayesemncinci. Uba wayengana-10 wayena-11 uba phantsi ngoba wayesengumntana omncinci qha wayephapha. Ndathi ndacaba ndimshiye ngasemva ndimbonanga mna ndava kusokuthiwa kukho ibhom xa ndigqiba ukujikela kulaa mithi yakho eShoprite. Ndiqonda khawuthi ke ndibaleke ndibuye ndize endlini uba mama wayeseplasini ayiphangela. Xa ndibuya ndide uXolani sibhidene etawuni andimazi ushiyekele phi. Ibethi iChristmas umfuna
into endayiphawulayo pha ngexesha ndothuka ngo-7 mna bona abantwana abancinci phaa esibhedlele bamfika imfiki apha bonke abantwana abancinci bamfika imfiki ziiglasi bayakhala apha eOnrifale.
Kwisuku lesithathu somfumana emoshwal setshabile.
2 civic organizations aided the victims of the Worcester bombings. The Khulumani Support Group and the Restitution Foundation that established the Worcester Hope and Reconciliation process.
Around about 4 years ago, people came together and said to one another, we see what is in Worcester is endemic of what's happening in South Africa. This is not our town. We cannot say collective, this is either my town or his township or your township. So a realization dawned on ordinary citizens in this town that we have to cross the divide, caused by ideologies of the past, caused by politics, caused by poverty, caused by drug addiction, alcohol abuse, and so forth. So it got institutionalized, this way of life, and we said we cannot grow as a community separately. And no politician is going to solve that because nothing happened since 94. Actually, the divide grew bigger. So we started the Hope and Reconciliation process. And you remember I used the word process. The Hope and Reconciliation is not an organization, it's a process. Process relying on building blocks so that we can heal one another. And we said, let's have a symbolic peace table. Once a year to show to our children when we break bread together that this is the way to go. This will be symbolic that we'll share bread, we invite our friend or neighbor into our inner sanctum, because that's what you do when you eat together and you share what you got with one another, and that actually is the road to travel.
A peace table is meer 'n kwessie van sien mekaar se andersheid raak.
Yeah.
Want elke mens is anders en 'n mens moet dit ook respekteer.
Yeah.
We embrace each other. You see that we had various cultural tables made up, cultural ethnic groupings, and that we get together as a symbolic gesture. The peace table are now a yearly event in our town, symbolic of the way ahead.
The smile on your face tells me that you love him, tells me that you know him, tells me you adore him.
I'm Stefan Skutsia. I accept responsibility for the Worcester bombings of 96.
In the group with Stefans were Johannes van der Westhuizen, his foster father, who was a farmer, and Cooper Meiburg and Cliffy Barnard, who were two elite members of the AWB.
Stefan Skutsie, the youngest of the perpetrators, conflicted by the death of 2 children, alerted the police to their whereabouts. They all received life sentences.
I was very active with the right-wing movements. In the last 2 decades, there was not action that I was not involved in or didn't know the person.
The survivors were left to manage as best they could without assistance from any quarter. A decade later, Olga Macingwane, having exhausted all other avenues, was determined to meet Stefans face to face. Harris Sibeko, chairman of the Worcester branch of the Khulumani support group, assisted Olga. With a small group of fellow survivors, they went to the prison in Pretoria to meet Stefans. This set in motion an unexpected journey of forgiveness.
For 13 years I was in a teen, like in a teen. Because I tried to write the letters to the TRC, I write the letters to the parliament, asking, where must I knock? Where's the right door? Now I can open my mouth. After 13 years, then I open my mouth and I can speak to my perpetrator. And I was concerned to see my perpetrator. That is why I was telling myself I want to go to Pretoria because I want to see my perpetrator.
When I started with restorative, part of your homework is to think what is the effect that you think is on your victims. And I really thought that I covered everything. I really thought I covered everything. But then I met Olga and then I realized that you don't have a clue what you have done.
When I was on the way to Pretoria, I can tell you really, I was having an anger. I didn't eat the whole way from here to Pretoria because I was having that anger.
And when we enter the room, there was a guy there who was fitting the chairs and so for us to sit in that room.
Ndiyambona lo muntu ulungisa izihlalo sizawuhlala apha. Andithathi ke ngoku hayi noba lo uzawuphinda aphume kuza uyena yena. Ndaxakeka ngoku andibona lo muntu ehlala naye ngoku. Kuba kukho nonontlalontle balapha entolongweni. Kukho nathi ke abantu abaze apha. Sihleli apha ke ngoku sonke sithe nqwadalana ke ngoku apha naye afika ahlale ke ngoku. Athi ke umphathi wonke umuntu makazazise uba ungubani. Ndiyomqonda ngelo xesha umuntu uba lo muntu nguye nalo. Ndasuke ndamangaliseka ke kwangummangaliso kum ngoba kaloku mna ndigade ubona umuntu omdala ngoba kaloku umuntu omdala nguye onokwenza izinto ayingomntana onokwenza izinto.
The moment Olga went in that room, I know she's my victim. Because I could have saw it, I could have felt it. That hurt, that pain, that hatred.
The first question I asked him, I was just asking, Stefan, you didn't know me, I didn't know you. Why you do this bad thing to me? And then he told me that he was hating the black people. And then I asked him, why you didn't go to the TRC? Because in 1998, we are having TRC in South Africa.
There was 2 reasons I didn't apply. First of all, we were out of the cut-off date. Second reason, I didn't change. If I went to the TRC, I would have lied because I didn't regret what I have done.
He was very honest. He told us everything.
I was part of a group that did murder people, that did commit acts where people died. And I wanted to be man enough to say, I was man enough to detonate a bomb. I'm man enough to take responsibility for the actions, for everyone who died, for everyone who was hurt.
Ndathi ndawujonga ke ngoku isimo esi sakhe uba mncinci kwakhe. Ndamfanisa nomntana kadadewethu. Khaba ke ngoku xa ke kule minyaka fana nomntana kadadewethu. Ngoku nxa ngumntana kadadewethu bendinothini?
Olga asked him, Stephans, if I can forgive you, what are you going to give me? And that was a sad one.
Ngoba ndityiwe laa nto athi andinanto. Into ethetha uba ngeba uyafuna undinika. Ngoku njengoba ndikhule ndiyinkedama nje, xa umuntu esithi into akanayo, ndiyazi ngam. Ngoku ilaa nto ndendathi kuye, oko andixelela kona, kuyinyani, kungeyonyani, kuphakathi kwakhe noThixo wakhe, mna andingomgwebi wakhe. Ndona ngokucinga, noba ndiyathandaza nditsho, ndithi ndona ngokucinga, ngokuthetha nangokwenza. Ngoku ke ngokutheni ndingena kumxolela ke ngoku uStephans, kunyanzelekile ndimxolele.
And Olga asked this guy again, what do you think about the other people that are not here now, and that you had so much, and you killed children and so on? He said, I would love to see those people. I want to talk to them. And the 2 of them stood up and hugged each other. You know.
And then I stand up and hug him to show that I forgive him.
Olga's first words was, I'm not going to forgive you. We started the day by knowing that I will not be forgiven. And we entered the day by she forgiving me. But Olga's forgiveness went much deeper than that. Olga fought for my release a lot. Because forgiveness for her was not words, it was a living. When I deal with something very painful, I write poems. Olga, veroordeel, gebrandmerk en deur die lewe gemartel, stap ek in die vertrek, slaggereed om nog slae te trotseer, alleen, teen 'n halfmaan sirkel van die media, burgemeester, gemeenskap en jy. Ja, vir jou kon ek dadelik herken, want bitterheid en woede gloei aan jou, met die glinstering van moeder, vrou, skoon weggeblaas deur 'n bom op ou Kersdag in Shoprite. Ek's nie hier om jou te vergewe nie, hoor, spoeg jy die woorde uit saam met 13 jaar se seer, wat ek tasbaar aanvoel. En soos jy jou storie vertel, ets jy al dieper en dieper in my, totdat jy knak en 'n seën raak sien. Come here my boy, genees jy nie net jou eie wond nie, maar ook 'n letsel wat ek jarelang saam sleep, van 'n ma wat uit my lewe geslyp het as kind. En jy druk my styf teen jou bors vas, totdat die seer oopskeer in trane van berou en vergifnis.
Wie is 'n mens dink aan jou kinders, dan dink jy aan die toekoms.
Ja.
En as jy die toekoms wil gelyk hê, dat almal oor dieselfde kam geskeer word, dan moet ons mekaar begin vergewe vir dit wat in die verlede gebeur het. En dit moet nie vergifnis van een kant af wees nie. Dit moet vergifnis wees van al die kante af.
In January 2015, Stefans was granted parole under very strict conditions. For the first 6 months, he had to report to prison on a daily basis. He has since been transferred to Klerksdorp to live with his mother.
When we were young, my mom sent me to shop. And when I come back, she was not there. She walked out of my life without greeting me. And as a young boy, I never get over it. My father was alcoholic, but he spent a lot of time with us. I remember he had tattoos on his body because he was working as a corrections officer in prison. He's also a boxer, so I think there's where my fighting time come. But he spent a lot of time with us, and unfortunately with the drinking, things happened that we were sent to an orphanage. In an orphanage, you know, when you're young, then you are new. The older guys always wants to show you they are a man, so it's where I start fighting. When I was in an orphanage, we were teased by the guys who have families because we don't have parents. So the fighting increased.
So you were in Windburg in the orphanage and then you were adopted.
Yeah, I don't precisely know what happened, but after being in the orphanage, my mom, not seeing her for so many years, I don't know how to explain it, as adopted.
Okay, so your mother actually adopted you then?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you experience that period of being back to your mother? Can you...
Yeah. It was difficult. My mom was staying with a guy, Peter Salman. I think it was the guy that I hated most in my life. That guy have given me so much hatred. If I have killed him the time that I wanted to do it, I would never have been in prison for killing all the people in Worcester. You can put it this way. I was with my mom and wish I was back in the orphanage. It was better not having parents than staying in a house with so much hatred. I think that is where my love for all the long distance running come in. Because what happens is that I don't want to be at home. It was a blessing being in a Koshuis. When he's back from home, I'm all on the road or I'm in my kamer. That's why I'm a guy who reads a lot. Because I'm too afraid to do something wrong where he will abuse me emotionally. In the classroom, I was not always so happy because most of the time I didn't do my homework. I didn't do well in school, except Afrikaans and history. You know, the AWB had a principle, white by night. I get involved with school kids where we assaulted black people simply because of the color of their skin. When we started, a few of my friends, it was only weekends, Friday and Saturday. But later on, me and one of my friends, we also did it on Sunday and sometimes on a Wednesday, and there was a time we did it every day. I remember my older sister told me many times, Stefans, they are also human. Then I told her they are not human. I'm until today not sure if I started because I was a racist or I started because I wanted to get rid of the anger. And hello my engeltjie. Wil jy my drukkie? This is my sweetheart. This is my sweetheart. This is my little angel. Dit is oom Dion. Dis oom Harris en dis oom Mark. Sê hulle oom. When I met Benjan, Jan van der Westhuizen se seun. Jan became that father figure that a boy always wanted.
How is it that the two of you got to know each other, and what role did Benjan play in your life?
We were together in Standard 4 in the same class, and he used to take me out weekends with his father, and to the farm, and later on holidays. So Jan is a very, very good guy. Until today, he's my role model.
You mean Jan van Westhuizen?
Jan van Westhuizen. Until today, he's my role model. I know he brought me to prison. I know bad things happen, but I cannot forget all the good that guy have done in my life.
So you left school before you completed school, and then you started to work full time on the farm.
Yes.
And what type of work did you do there? So you
normal farming. Normal farming. Sheep farm, so it is working with the sheep, scare those, move the sheep.
And did you live with Van Westhuizen in the house that time?
Yeah, I stayed with him in the house.
And were there any black people working on the farm, or
no black people?
No black people at all.
We did the work. There were no black people on the farm.
When you were with Jan van Westhuizen on the farm, you also started to develop strong racist views.
It started with Jan. He was a member of the Israel Vision Church, and spending their weekends, spending their holidays. We on Sabbath days we come together, and we have the Bible, but we read it differently. And it was where I was taught that I'm a superior race. The Israel Vision was there long before 94.
Yeah.
But it was a religion. It was practiced privately on farms or houses or whatever.
Yeah.
After 94, the Israel Vision became a terrorist movement.
I'm still afraid to go to ShowBrite during the festive season and also the weekends when it's just full, you know.
Right from the start, we knew we will go to prison. The idea for us was to kill as much as possible people before we go to prison.
Jy dink jy's ontslagen en hy skok dat alles verby gegaan, maar dit sal jy altyd by bly. Want toe staan ek 2 jaar gelede, ek is besig om te werk, maar iewers skielik iets het afgesgaan. Iets het al skiet of whatever. Ek het so groot geskrik daai dag. Want ek het stil gestaan en ek het gehuil en ek kon nie verder werk nie. Ek moes vir 'n tyd my afdeling verlaat, want ek kon nie werk nie. Ek meen is nou 2 jaar gelede. En die Bonneprovinsie het nou al 18 jaar gelede gebeur, maar sy raak ontslagen dat die
I never know beforehand which town we will choose. That decision was made by Jan. The only thing that I know, it was certain things. For example, on 24 December 1985, in Amazon-Twiti, the ANC planted a bomb in Checkers. People were killed that day. And the town, I think, was not important. I think what was important was the day 24 December.
Electronic dan nafika imilenze edalimala imilenze le awunodoyika apha esifubeni ngoku ingxaki umqolo afuna ngiphakamisa into ezithile.
For us, it was also to bring, when people think about Christmas, they must have sorrow, they must have pain.
Le mini mphayikhaya mina singafuni ukucinga kakhulu. Even nana ngoku ndihambayo kusasa ndishuka mama abengafuni uthi yaba nguShoprite again Z24 futhi namhlanje sokuya ndise ndiyaya.
When I came to prison, my only regret was for killing so little people, because I really believed in white supremacy. I was a strong supporter of almost every hate group in the world. I was a member of various groups. I was also part of the Wit Wolwe. In prison, because of the hate, I received the nickname Hitler.
Okay, ndikhumbula la suku lenzekile yile nto ndingathanda uhlala ndisoloko ndindedwa ndisoloko ndibepha ebantwini ndifike kubekho noba mandiqomba ndindoda ndithatha nabantwana abasikhalisa umculo ndingakwazi ube ndicinga kakhulu ngoba ndithi lokubetha ixesha ndicingela mini.
Those people, they lost their loved ones, and some of them they were injured, and the government did do nothing about it. And some of these people are still moving up and down for treatments of that bomb blast paying their own money.
En dat is ook baie mense nou nog sit met pyn, mense wat hier gekry het wat niemand is nou niks mee te doen daarmee nie. I mean, dat my mense miskien sielkundige hulp nodig het, mense wat moet geld kry vir dokters en daai, want ek weet van 'n kliënt wat nou nog in die winkel kom, wat sy vrou hier gekry het, sy nou onlangs operasie gehad, maar nou wil ek weet wie staan man vir daai, wie moet dit betaal? Hulle moet dit self betaal. En wie wat regverdig is.
Ja, ik was wel lang tijd in het hospitaal geweest zo. En er zit niks geld ontvangt zo nog niet, van het government of zo niet. Was ook een salaris en zo uit te krijgen niet. En was de winkel weg, dus de dokter toen gaan we zelf betalen voor de dokter en zo. En,
I started my prison sentence in Cape Town. Pretoria is my 13th prison.
13th prison?
My 13th prison. Being in so much prisons, you are not doing anything good. You are a troublemaker. And in prison, you must be a hard man. I didn't get regular visits, so drugs were my income. I used it to buy my toiletries. I must also buy takkies, I must also buy a tracksuit, I also must buy stuff. You need the money. You cannot survive without supporting prison. Obviously, all the black people hate you. And they have reason to hate you because you committed a crime against them. But the white people also hate you, or they were afraid to associate with you because then people will also say they are racist. And over time you realize that the people helping you is the black people. So then I learned that the black people have more rugrat, backbone than the white people. There was times that I hated the white people for being slapgat. And I had a fortune that being in a community cell, you must start living with people. There you start to know that black people have the same dreams as you. They want the same thing, a house, sport, family, love. And it was in that time that I can say that it made me realize that we are the same. And it opened the door to listen to the cock.
Eugene de Kock, known as Prime Evil, is the former head of Vlakplaas, a base of apartheid death squads. Convicted for multiple murders, he has been serving 2 life sentences, plus 212 years.
I didn't have any hair on my kop. You know, I was a skinhead, so on that time I was also talking Skolitaal and whatever. So when I greeted Eugene, he didn't greet me because he don't mix with Skollies. And he didn't know that Pa Jan is my father. He didn't in fact know that the Worcester bombers are 4. He thought they were 3 because the 3 never talked about me. And what happened is this, we went one day in the binnenplaats and someone have told him that Jan is my stepdad. And he asked me, look, I heard the story that Jan is your father. I said, look, he was never adopted me legally. But Jan take me as his son, and until today I take him as my father. And then we start talking. Now, on that time, my nickname was Hitler. And Eugene used to tell me, Stefansman, this is not a nickname. Now, I didn't give me the nickname was given by black people to me. And then Eugene convinced me to take off the nameplate and just rewrite it in my own handwriting as Stefans could see a prison number and my crimes. Eugene told me, Stefans, I never want you to lift ons praat ons van die volk. I don't want you to desert your folk. Jy's 'n boer en jy moet trots wees om 'n boer te wees. But if you go back in the history and the Anglo-Boereoorlog, 27,000 women and children were murdered. That 27,000 women and children are going to accuse you for what you have done in Worcester because you have murdered women and children. And then Eugene convinced me we had some outstanding cases that was never brought to justice, to get it off my chest. So me and him went to PE in 2003, where I talked to the police about the cases. He also convinced me to start the restorative justice process. Eugene didn't only save my life, he saved every life that I would have taken if I was released from prison. Because one thing we have to be clear about that, one time or another I was going to be released. And if I didn't change, the hatred would have been so much that I would kill many more people. I had a lot of time in prison to form hate, to make plans. So he didn't only save my life, he saved every life that I would have taken if I didn't meet him. No, you can actually start planning it because it will help me and Adrian because we want. Before we went to prison, we used to read the old normal Bible, but differently. So when we read about the Israelites, we read about us. When we read about the Philistines and that was attacked and all the non-Israelites, we read about the black peoples, the colors, the Chinese and the nations. And the time that I decided that I'm cleaning my life, I was in a community cell. We were probably 120 in the cell, and I told the guys, I'm going to change my life. People laughed. Everyone was waiting for me to relapse back in smuggling, doing the things prisoners do. But I started to change my life.
When did your thinking around race start to change?
While I was with Eugene, I was still a racist. The thing that bothered me was killing innocent people. Until today, I don't have a mirror in my cell because I don't want to see the face of a murderer. I don't know if inmates will tell you, but most of us get nightmares. It was feeling like I'm sleeping and someone is sitting on my chest and choking me. But the nightmare was so extreme that in my dream I cannot even shout, please God help me. That's why when I decided to saw the psychologist to see, look, I have serious problems. Then it happened in 2006, I started with restorative justice. And at the same time I have done 3 programs. And for me, I cannot separate them because they were together. The first one was restorative justice. The second one was mind power. It was a 3-month program developing yourself. And the fourth one was my training as a drug, HIV and life skills facilitator. It was a 1-year program. I remember when we started the program, there was no manual. The Tannie wrote something on paper, photocopy it and give it to us. My answers developed the manual that exists today. Because when she said make a list of the people you hate, the next Monday everyone comes with a small list of 2 or 3 names. On that time I have brought a paper because she said make a list of people you hate, and I had a lot of names on that list. I started with my mom. I started with my father for sending me to conference. I started with the children who had parents and don't appreciate the parents. I wish I had a mom who tell me go make me coffee. I wish I had a mom who tell me pick up your clothes. And they don't appreciate the moms. I hated Mother's Day, I hated Father's Day, I hated Christmas Day. I hated the community who saw what happened and never talked. I hated the school teachers. I hate some of my friends. And I could have given you all the reasons. I hated the judge, I hated the police investigator officer. So the list was quite long. And it was, each one had a reason why I hated him. It was only when I started working on the list, you start with the easy one first. I think my mom was last because she was the most difficult. But you start with the easy ones. Why do you hate the judge? He was doing his job. Why do you hate the investigating officer? He was doing his job. So that you scratch easily. But some things are, where the pain is more, it's difficult. I decided I'm going to make 4 decisions. First, I'm not going to use my young age as an excuse. I'm not going to tell people, look here, I'm sorry, but please remember I was 17 years old. I didn't know what I'm doing. Because on 17, I was old enough to know murder is wrong. The second decision I decided to make was not to shift the blame. Because no matter who influenced me to do what, the decision was mine to accept the religion, to be with it, to be part of the Boer struggle. The decision was there to fight for my country. It was my decision. No one put a gun against my hand and said, build the bomb. No one put a gun against my hand and said, donated the bomb. I did it on free will. So the third thing I have done is this. I told myself that I'm not going to justify, because it's one of the elements that I have picked up during the DRC, a lot of people said, but the ANC have done that. But I decided I'm not going to say what happened. I'm not there to justify. I'm there to ask for forgiveness. So I didn't justify my deeds. Murder is murder. If you are a freedom fighter or a resistant movement, you have murdered someone. The fourth thing is that I will not tell what I have accomplished in prison. But if any of the four things come out, it's good. But I'm not going to mention it.
You must wait for the time now.
In response to Olga's story of forgiveness, the Worcester Hope and Reconciliation process brought white people, farmers, business owners, and church leaders together with black members of the broader Worcester community. They made it possible for many more people to go by train to Pretoria.
The Worcester Hope and Reconciliation process and Kulumani tried very hard to get Stefans Coetzee transferred to a correctional facility in Worcester.
I think that a lot of things happen behind the scenes that I'm not aware of or the public. When we first applied for me to go to Worcester with Harris, I think it was 2009, how many letters was written? How many times it was denied?
Here we have been written about Stefans. He was asking for the pardon, for the justice, for the pardon.
Correctional Services at that time was quite adamant that they were not interested in making this happen, and they actually challenged us and said, bring the people to Pretoria.
During one of my parole hearings, I received a letter, I cannot go to Worcester for security reasons for my victims. Then when I went to the parole board, they said you cannot go out before you meet your victims. And then I asked the chairman, you are contradicting yourself here.
At that year's Peace Table event, we announced the idea of a peace train. And we worked out carefully what it's going to cost more or less to finance one person to go on the train. And challenged the Worcester community. And we were so surprised. Within 2 weeks' time, we had enough money to take more than 50 people on a peace train. The Department of Correctional Services then became very supportive of this initiative. And they said, well, they are willing to sponsor a luxury train for us to Pretoria. And then on the peace train, the Department of Correctional Services helped us with some of their professional staff, psychologists, chaplains, social workers, to help the survivors prepare for the meeting.
Ek verwag van hierdie besoek 'n vergoeding vir my vir die pyn en lyding wat ek van daai dag af het tot vandag.
Jy moet weet dat as hy vir die Here gevra het om hom te vergewe, dat hy die Here hom vergewe. Al is daar van ons mense wat hom nie gaan vergewe.
Ek verwag dat ek genesing sal kry as ek vergifnis gee.
We did not expect at the venue that there would be so many people. We did not expect that there would be press present there. And I think that was in the beginning difficult for people to get used to this environment.
Daar was ook baie nare dag. Ons was okay geweest, maar die dag toe hy inkom in die saal en ons hom sien, het almal uitgebars in trane. Jy weet nie of jy hartseer was of jy jammer was of wat nie, maar was 'n baie emosionele dag.
Besamba sokuboniswa kwiholo elikhulu. Ngokutsho kwakhe kathiwa abantu abakwaziyo umxolela mabaze baphambili. Ndathi andinokwazi umxolela. Ngokuba sekunje namhlanje singenabrata kungenayakhe. Ingqina emveni koko zange ndonwabe. Kwakukho noogqirha phana banike ngondinceda baneempilisi ngoba into yakhe yavela ndenza umsindo kakubi. Ngoba yena sokutorha ixolo naye andisoze ndibe nayo. Hayi, ndawude ndiyongena engcwabeni bakuyileyo.
So Stefans kon jy sien die regte berou oor wat hy gedoen het. Want ons moes dan moet in gepraat met hom, baie mense het vrae gevra. Hoekom het hy dit gedoen? Hoe voel hy oor hy het gedoen het? En hy het regte waar berou getoon oor dit wat hy gedoen het. Want hy besef wat hy gedoen het agterna was verkeerd.
Each of us has got a shared woundedness, and if you take South Africa from the beginning, the slavery, the atrocity in that, then the imperialistic wars, the Zulus fighting against the English, the Boers fighting against the British Empire. I mean, if I refer to the Boer Wars and the concentration camps resulting from that, there's no difference between that and genocide under the Nazis. Then came apartheid. Even worse, the same people being oppressed are now oppressing other people. So, woundedness in the blood doesn't or don't go away if you don't talk about it, if you don't receive therapy, because that's part of our genetic makeup. You get wounded and it gets delivered from generation to generation, the stories told, the perceptions because of that. So, the narrative telling each other about our woundedness, telling how we experience South Africa, that is going to provide the cure.
One of the beautiful things of this Peace Train journey is how it brought the whole Worcester community to get involved in this initiative. And we also realized how complex the issue of forgiveness is in South Africa.
After the peace train returned from Pretoria, correctional services brought Stefans to Worcester so that all the survivors, including those who did not go on the train, could meet with him. 1,000 or so people packed into the community hall to hear Stefans.
Zange ndiye mna unomama uqala kwami umbona mna waza yena apha eWorcester prison ngokuqalisa kwala session yeVOD ke ngoku.
When I was informed that I must be going to Worcester to attend my parole hearing there, I was nervous. I'm Stefans Kutsia. I accept responsibility for the Worcester bombings of 96. I accept the blame for the pain, the suffering and losses that you, the survivors of the bombing, had to endure because of my actions.
Survivors were also able to meet Stefans in small groups.
In die maandag aand, toe kon ek slaap nie. Dat was vir my die proses van die bom afgevat het. Dat het heeltemal voor my afgespeel.
Worcester was difficult. It's going back to the community where you have harmed. We had a lot of time where people explained, and for example, there was a lady, she was a nurse. So she was not hurt, but she was the one who was helping the children and the men, all that trauma, and it affected her. And I never thought about it. I never thought about the ladies who must go back the next day to ShopRite to work again. The ladies who are working there 20 years later. How do they feel when Christmas is near? You understand? So you don't realize what you have done until you meet your victims.
Ik aanvaar voor hom. Ik had niemand. Mijn kinderen zeer gekleed, maar zij is zo zeer gekleed als anderen wat kinders verloren. Maar Stefans, ik had jongen.
Ik heb veel vergeven, maar vergifnis dat die al vat niet de pijn onmiddellijk wegneemt. En vergifnis is niet net voor die dag. Ik moet elke keer vragen of mezelf herinner aan die vergifnis wat ik voor u gegeven heb.
I attended one of these interactions where Deliswa Bisakwe stood up and she said, I hate you.
Kabuya yonke nala ngqumbo nala hatred yonke lanto.
Left me suffering because you took everything from me. I hate you with a passion.
And I remember how I sat there and how difficult it was for me to hear these words, to be confronted so vividly by Neliswa Busakwe that forgiveness is so complex and is not coming easily made me again realize how uncomfortable the whole process of forgiveness is.
Baie van ons het hom vergewe. Minister is daar, maar men wie is ons as mens. Dus dan, baie van ons het hom vergewe en ons het gesels met aangeknop. Hy was blij vir ons te sien en ons het nog foto's geneem by Correctional Service saam met Stefans die Sondag en die Maandag is Stefans terug Pretoria toe sy sentence verder gaan uitdien daar.
Neliswa Busakwe, she remained in our minds. And one day, Harris Sebegwo came back to us at the Worcester Hope and Reconciliation Process meeting. And he said, people, I've spoken with Neliswa Busakwe. And she is aware now how seriously we take this matter of Stefans Coetzee. And she said, she gave it some thought. She is prepared to forgive Stefans Coetzee. If there can be some support for this child who was completing his last year at school and who was about to attend the matric dance. One of the highlights of a child's school career. And she said there's no money to buy him new clothes. There's no money to buy him new shoes. And the child feels very uncomfortable to go and attend that event. She said if there is a potential possibility that somebody can support this child with this need, she might be ready to consider to think differently about Stefans. One of the people who attended that meeting was a Dutch Reformed Church minister. And he immediately said, don't worry, I will make a plan. And after this, Neliswa kept to her word and said, listen, I am very honest with you. I am now willing to forgive Stefans Coetzee. I think, in a way, this story of forgiveness doesn't necessarily fit in to the books that people write about forgiveness. But this is a very real story of forgiveness in Worcester and the journey that one of the survivors walked. And the responsibility of also not only experiencing the saying of sorry, but experiencing that there is doing of sorriness that have happened. In December last year, at very short notice, we were informed that there would be a parole hearing for Stefans Coetzee. And Harris was very adamant that he wanted to go. And in his wisdom, he took Neliswa Busakwe with him.
I was very, very blessed when the head of prison told me that Harris Sebegwo will be there. The person that I wanted to be there will be there. And then I was informed the lady who said she hates you will be there. So obvious, I thought, no, my friend, you are not getting parole. I waited outside after we talked for them to make the decision. I don't know how long it was. For me, it felt like an hour, a day, a year. And the longer the hearing is, the more convinced the people are Stefans is not getting a parole.
And then Neliswa Busakwe also requested that parole need to be granted to Stefans Coetzee.
And I saw Harris' face. I know that I'm getting a bait. Because he was smiling, he cannot hide a smile.
Knock, knock, Mama Olga. Today, Neliswa hugged Stefans.
Yes. Oh, a long journey, John.
Oh, Mnake. It was not easy. And the very same person who you want to lungis inhliziyo wandithambisa inhliziyo ikwangumama lo. Ikwangumama lo amane ndifaka endikotela iBhayibhile and all that. Myeke Nelson, myeke kuwe uzawuenda apha wena unguphosana nezulu ngenxa yokuqumbela umuntu. Myeke.
Nyatheli phezu komhlaba hayi ndingangena etrongweni kweli cala ungayovalelwa mna ayandifuna
nam ndima naye uba okuba nje amxolele mhlawumbi ngakhona into ekhululekayo ukuthi ebomini bakhe uba
ndiyamuva kakuhle but ngolu hlobo ndikubekele ngalo kwasekuqaleni ixola ndingakabi nalo.
Now, the other bombers have applied for presidential pardon. Correctional services met with the survivors in Worcester about this, as they are obliged to do by the courts.
There were about 80 people in Worcester gathered that Saturday afternoon. And they were very angry. Very angry. They were particularly angry at the Department of Justice and the Department of Correctional Services because they felt they have been betrayed by the government and the South African society at large. They felt that a lot of promises have been made after the bombing, that some form of compensation would be considered, and nothing has happened in that regard. They mentioned that they are in general satisfied with the process that Stefans has walked and the parole that he has been granted. And for them to be expected to endorse presidential pardoning for those three, that is asking too much of them. And it's very clear to me that the journey that Stefans has walked will be the benchmark for the Worcester survivors when they look at the other perpetrators. And I think it's also clear that the other three perpetrators have not nearly reached that standard that Stefans has set.
When you forgive someone, it must be something in your heart. We are not supposed to be forced. That is why I come to the victim saying, I don't force anyone, but that thing, it comes from your heart. You know, to forgive someone, God must talk to you and then set in your heart. And then at that time, you didn't see a sinner, you see a child of God.
Nelson Mandela brought forgiveness. No? No, in fact, he brought a broom to clean the house, and the broom's name was forgiveness. But we didn't forgive each other. We set it under the cupboard. No? We need to talk about apartheid. I believe that we need to start talking about what happened in the past. I'm not talking about the police assaulting the ANC of APLA or whatever. I'm talking, if I may be straight, I'm talking about the black lady who was preparing the food for the children, but when the food are dished out, she get it in the blackboard and eat outside. I'm talking about the black man who's cleaning the garden, but he's not, cannot go with you to the swimming pool. I'm talking about the black boy who wants to play rugby, but he cannot play for the Springboks because he's black. I'm talking about the black lady who wants to be a model, but she knows she can never be Miss South Africa because she was black. I talk about the guy who had dreams on school to become a businessman or whatever, but because of the color of his skin, he cannot have certain positions. I'm talking about the black lady who heard she's a mate. I'm talking about the black guy who heard he's a kafir. We need to go back to them and say sorry. I know the lady who used to work in your house is not working there anymore. But today there's working someone else who had the same pain that she had. Ask her forgiveness. Don't do it on the TV, don't do it on the newspapers. Just put it down and say, let's talk. You know, I have done this and this and this for the lady in the apartheid regime. And I'm asking sorry for it. Because we remember, we always blame Eugene and we call him prime evil. But prime evil was supported by the apartheid people who voted for the NP. And that is what we need to talk about. Because if we look at Worcester, for many years the black people who were hurt, they moved on. But if we are truly honest and we saw it, the pain was there. When I was there, I felt the pain. Because you saw, you heard them. And that's the same with the black people. After 94, we are sorry, we move on. We didn't move on. They still have the pain. They still want to say certain things. They still want to hear certain things. Look how many people change by being honest with them, telling them I'm sorry. How many of the normal black people just want to hear it? We are sorry. And I'm talking, we have to start with Evie de Klerk and say, look here, we have done certain things, we say sorry. I'm talking about the pastors who have preached apartheid in the NG Kerk, who have to go back to the community and say, we are sorry, we supported the system. I'm talking about the businessmen who didn't give opportunities. It must not be words, it must be a living. And my raad to the Afrikaners, we have a book we call The Handves van Mensenregte, a small white book that is in prison. You know what, that book is useless if you cannot live it daily.